Or Section 4835 of the responsible for paying interest payment of the principal payment over the treasury of the 4835 of the payment of the interest of the repaying principal of the treasury of the non-credit reform account. The subject to all of the applicable conditions specified here, the officials of the board of the easily properly execute the interest payment of the principal, the repayment of the transaction, each payment of the principal, the advance of the pay of the federal program, and if they must be made with the due with immediately available the funds by internal transfer of the fund of the non-credit reform account with the treasury for the transfer must be made with the central accounting reporting system. Outstanding principal amount of each of the advance of the due with the payable, the maturity of the date with the respective advance from there, multiple outstanding with the advance of the same with the maturity of the date with the repayment of the principal made with the maturity will be made against federal program aids for the outstanding advance of the first out of the basis of the payments must be with the apply of the sequence of first and the earliest made advance outstanding the time of the repayment of each payment must be made apply with the first payment the delay of the term of the in the payment of unpaid for the accrue for the interest of the outstanding with the principal the interest for the payment then correspond with the payments of the principal the repayment that must be with the federal program aids for the government purchasing and collection system of the receipt of the official service before the date of the principal to repay. Official service will not approve the central accounting reporting for the principal the payment the corresponding interest payment that's due on the same day of the time corresponding interest payments for the receipt of the intergovernmental purchase and collection services referring to subsection of the 4835 of the 80 with the chapter with the more information corresponding to the part of the procedures related to the interest payment and local conditions of the federal program aids for the bank of the installer interest payment with the principal repayment of the amount within the chapter will do with the federal program aids for the make sure of the interest payment for the principal payment is for the local condition that's called to prevent federal program aids from making itself the interest payment the principal repayment the less late charges defined in section 4835.70 of the chapter will not be assessed for the period of the however the interest will be continued with the accrue with the established interest rate. Federal program agency shall be established contingency to proceed with the conduct of the interest payment of the principal to repayment of the transaction fiscal year of the federal program agency for the officer for the temporary close with the due to the local conditions. The federal program agency is strongly encouraged to share with the contingency plan with the fiscal services. 4835-20 with the policy relating to business days. Remember the interest payment, the maturity, the other scheduled payment of the day falls on either day with the Treasury of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York is now open for business because of the payment which would otherwise be made with the of the day that must be made with a new business day thereafter. Section must not change with the interest payment the day with the computation interest defined within subsection 4835.30 of the chapter must not resolve the late charge defined in subsection 4835.70 of the chapter. 4835.30 procedure related with the computation of the interest advance treasury for the otherwise specified the statute for the interest advance must come by used on the base for the actual day of the collapse but include with the day with the respective advance made with the first payment over the interest for the day with the respect due for the advance of the present interest the payment over the all the other payment of the interest due for the respective advance and then include with the day of the repayment payment of the interest and associated with the principal repayment of the next interest payment of the any other payments of interest for the day with the further respect in advance to the actual date with the left but not include a previous interest for the previous payment of the date but include the net interest of the payment of the date. Some of the numbers retaining 11 multiplying the result of the 12 months of the year to be divided number of months interest payment the period of the time component interest calculation is at time is equal to the 80 actual days lapsed, but not including the day of the respective advance made with the first payment, the interest due with the respective advance, previous interest payment, the day for all the payments of the interest due with the respective advance, then include with the day payment of the day of the interest associated principal repayment, next interest payment, and the other payment of the interest due with the respective advance, divided by the PD actual days left, and that including previous payment day with the included next interest of the payment date, times 12 times the months of the interest period, and the amount of the interest equal to the product with the principal amount, interest rate with the time, interest rate, principal rate, and time, where interest amount of interest due, P is the principal amount, R is the interest rate, and the T is the time. 4835.40 policy relating to the interest of the payment of the day unless otherwise specified with the statute interest due with the day payable to semi-annual March 31st to September 30th. The other interest payment of the day with negotiated with the federal program and is to provide sufficient justification, although the Treasury requires the interest payment of frequency with the minimum annually. Alright, 4835.50 policy relating to early payment repayments for the principal the early repayment with the calculated market value unless otherwise specified in the staff the Treasury will receive it at least 5 business days with the note of the federal program aids to the repayment of the advance for the whole of the part of the business for the day of the mature before maturity date with the advance for each of the repayment advance must private from which would result in the yield of this amount with the repay with the firm not include with the day of the early repayment but include with the day of the maturity equal to with the Treasury of the new issue of the rate with the issue marketable Treasury secure with the comparable materials compute with the trade with the close of the business 2 days prior with the day of each early repayment is same calculation method of the Treasury plus accrue the interest for the amount with the prior to the day of the early repayment. If the federal program agency submits the interest payment that corresponds with each of the payment of principal after the effective date with each of the payment principal, the first official service will reject each early payment repayment transaction in the central accounting reporting system. In the event the federal program agency wishes to resign, request for the early payment of principal, the Treasury must receive the notification from the federal program agency and request the rescission of the before hour of the 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 business days prior to the request of the early prepayment date, further to the notify of the Treasury recession and the time we made a result of the fee specified in the memorandum of the understanding. Alright, 4835 policy for the procedure relating with the maturity. Each is in advance of the month maturity of the maturity date specified for the federal program and the agency in respect with the down expenditure of the transaction, transfer the transactions made with the central accounting response reporting system required for the advance for the maturity date is selected with the federal program. The agency must meet with all of the criteria of the set forth in the statute for the memorandum of the understanding. Maturity date with the must coincide with the interest payment. The date within interest must be due with the maturity of the federal program agency is unable to repay with the advance for the maturity date. Federal program agency may request for the advance for the Treasury repay for the original advance for the payment of borrowing in advance for the maturity specified for the federal program agency. The payment borrowing in advance meeting with all the criteria set forth in the statute of the memorandum of the understanding. Federal program agency must immediately notify the treasurer if at any point of the necessary reasonable to appear with the federal program agency will be unable to repay with the outstanding obligations which they are due within such the federal program agency will work closely with the Treasury Office Management Budget to obtain an operation funding and satisfy the obligations it fulfills. Policy and procedures relating to late payments to prevent the payment or amount with the trustee for the pickup of the outstanding overdue with the amount with the payable amount, maybe the overdue amount plus interest for the over the computed so forth. The late charge must accrue with the scheduled payment. The dates of the overdue with the amount with the date of the payment is made with the late chamber must be computed on the basis of the actual date of the elapsed days of the schedule for the payment due for the such overdue amount and include the date of which the payment is made with a B 365 days or years since AD of the actual date for the lapse within scheduled payment is for the overdue amount to include with the date of the payment in 3 late charges of the accrue with the late charge rate. Initial late charge master on effectively until the earlier of the A of the day of the which of the overpayment is overdue with the amount of the accrued late charge is made. B, the day of the 91 days after the scheduled payment, the date of the overdue amount with the event with the overdue amount with the amount with the accrued late charge is not paid for before the day of the 91 days after the schedule for the payment of the overdue amount with the amount payable. The must be the sum of the overdue amount with the amounts of the accrued late charge plus late charge on the sum of the accruing new late charge to be the determined equivalent within 3 above the 91 days interval schedule the payment due with the overdue amount must be applied to the overdue amount with the amounts accrued late with the charge of the date with the payment and overdue with the amount with all amounts for the 2 of the accrued late charges made. 483580 responsibility policy of the receiver relating to the interest payment of transactions. Payment of the interest for the other non-principal amount of the made using the intergovernmental procurement, intergovernmental purchase and collection systems. Interest payment must be made with the treasury of each cash payment that may not be made using any form of the credit for the federal program agency will profit the interest for the payment of the intergovernmental purchase and collection system recover the payment of the classification transaction accountability of the amount of the intergovernmental purchase and collection system transaction reported automatically. General fund receipts of the account with recorded the payment of the collection transaction accountability with the amount of the intergovernmental purchase and collection transactions reported automatically. General fund receipt account of the collection transaction accountability with the Treasury accounting with the civil and with the business type code. Generally, the Treasury established official service separated with the specific general fund receipt negotiated with the each non-credit reform account. Civil debt 7 digit for the general fund recipients generally with start with the 020 of the Treasury accounting symbol for the purpose of expenditure of the Treasury with the transaction with the intergovernmental purchase and collection system is the responsible federal program agency to enter for the payment of the transaction intergovernmental purchase and collection system as well with the enter for the correct of the agency location Treasury account symbol when the business event trading transaction code for guidance the integrated intergovernment purchase and collection transaction federal program agency references website federal program agency also conform with the questions the IP intergovernmental purchase and collection help desk. Alright, 48, 35, 90, responsible policy of the relating of the principal repayment of transaction, repayment principal of repayment that must be established with the central accounting responsible for the program agency for repayment of the non-expenditure transaction system will need to include the following information. Transaction date, effective the date that must be the same with the date with the repayment amount with the interest date with the maturity subcar if the payable. The effect of the date of the principal of the repayment of the transaction submitted with the central accounting reporting system with the date of the early with the date of the transaction submitted to the central reporting system. The effect of the date with the date with these later with the date of the transaction submitted. Being on specific circumstances set forth in the memorandum of the understanding of additional information may require including non-expenditure transfer to the central accounting reporting system. Federal program agency responsible to ensure that all the required information non-expenditure transfer the transactions is correct with the required information and if it completely and appears the official service will approve of the transaction central accounting reporting system with official year of official services will reject with the transaction central accounting reporting for the information correct with the contact with the federal program agency to provide with the reason for rejecting transaction all necessary the correction with the change of the specified official services must be made with the submission of the transaction. Transfer of the funds of the payment, repayment of the payment of the principals must certify with the federal program agency for the central accounting reporting system associated with the non-principal payment that must enter for the federal program agency intergovernmental purchase and collection system of the 3 p.m. of the day set forth the effective date within the central accounting reporting system to be proven on the same day, on the reported on the same day, and with the accounting period of the same day, transaction received 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time will approve of the following business day, reported the following business will be reported at accounting period of the following business day and will be considered late. Alright, 38, section 4840, responsibility, accounting reporting responsibility relating non-credit reform accounts. Section 9105 of Title 31 United States Code requires that the government agencies include the federal program agencies for non-credit reform accounts, among any other things, prepare financial statements over covering all the accounts and associated activity that have the financial statements audited. Section 35 of 13 United States Code requires the Treasury to prepare reports that inform the President, Congress, the public of the financial operation of the United States, the government, in fulfillment of the mandate. Fiscal service to publish daily, monthly Treasury statement that receive the outlay of the United States government, the quarterly Treasury, the bulletin, and the annual official financial report of the United States government. Alright, 48-40-10, Federal Program Agency for the Reconciliation Responsibility to ensure the take of the act of the financial report information files shall serve to obtain with the Treasury require the Federal Program Agency to reconcile with the data for the account balance to maintain with the Treasury through the central accounting reporting of the account settlements for the regular with the recurring base with the official service will oppose the Treasury direct monthly detail of the principal accrued with the balance with the balances report with the Treasury accounting each Treasury accounting symbol that is borrowed from the Treasury with the entire detail of the principal the accrued with the interest of the balance of the report shall the written principal accrued with the interest of the breakdown with the specified advance for the transaction official service monthly with the Treasury direct with the general ledger reports thereof with the financial official service balance loan with the receivable capitalized interest receivable interest for receivable interest rate revenue gain loss for each of the federal program each of the balance for the official service of any of the United States general ledger accounts. Federal Program Agency shall use the balance for both of the reports reconciled with the central accounting reports of the accounting statement of the Federal Program Agency shall request them reconcile regarding reconciliation report that may contact with the federal investment of the borrowing branch of the receive of the contacts and responsible to the Federal Program Agency to post all of the account activity transaction reported with the official service of the corresponding activity of the Federal Program Agency the internal accounting system all responsibility of the Federal Program Agency reconcile the internal current account balance of the corresponding account balance in the central accounting reporting system. Alright, 48-40-20, intergovernmental elimination. The Federal Program Agency shall the further Treasury Financial Manual, Volume 1, Part 5100 of the account for the reconciliation of the internal account of the balance of the account with the central accounting reporting system as well as the area with official service the question the account with the reconciliation being addressed. Treasury prepared with the distributed report with the statement of the financial management and operation of the United States for the government to support with the other federal program agencies that require the submit the federal financial information from the governmental treasury account with the symbol for the trial balance system. Requirements that require instruct the city system the guidance of the reconcile the intergovernmental transaction with the Treasury Financial Manual, Part 4700. Or in addition, various states for the Treasury of the report annual the gross financial additional operations during the preceding official year with the non-credited year expected condition operation of these accounts during the specified number of years in the future fulfillment of the mandate of the publishing information financial condition operations, in particular with the new non-credit reform account that during preceding official year of the official service will comply with the information in the computer central accounting report system of the Federal Program Agency official service will publish the information in the Treasury Financial Management, Treasury Financial Manual Bulletin, and additional guidance, Office Management Bulletin A136, Revised Financial Reporting Requirements. Contact Treasury Support Center, telephone number to Federal Investment Borrowings Branch, Bureau officially of the Department of Treasury. Budget, Non-Credit Reform Act transactions, subclass code of account symbols, preparations, budget reporting branch, budget operations analysts, and Bureau of Services, official services, summary update, section title, and summary changes. And that was chapter 4800, responsible relating to non-credit from borrowing. That's volume 1, part 2.